This is Empowered Human Academy. Welcome home.
I think that this year probably for most people has showed that like there is a lot that happens in the gray areas, and life is not as black and white as one might hope it would be.
This is about love. This is about light. This is about the idea that you have everything you will ever need.
And this life of yours, this is where you grow, you expand, and you remember who you really are.
I'm Abe.
I'm Isaac.
In Empowered Human Academy, we join with humans of all kinds to feel the inspiration that can only come with empowered living.
The stories you hear today are unique, but the energy you hear today belongs to you too. So, with hearts wide open, let's begin.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Empowered Human Academy. Today we have our awesome friend, Megan Kantor. Megan, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to dive into conversations about life and all the things that we usually talk about when we're together in person and over text. So thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well today. I had a nice walk and I've had a very productive morning. So I'm actually feeling pretty good.
I love
Excellent.
it. Let's dive into it.
Cheers to that. As with every episode, we begin with the question of identity. Not the identity you present to others, not the way you introduce yourself necessarily. It might be the same. But what I want to get at is how you think of yourself as outside of any roles or external labels as you can. When you come home and it's just you and you don't have to be anything for anyone, who are you? What words of identity do you choose?
That's a fantastic question, and the question that I feel like I am asking myself all the time. I think I'm definitely like a deep feeler, and I think that's ultimately that's the word that I kind of come back to. It inspires a lot of my choices, and yeah, it's in an ideal world and the ideal version of myself. I'm a person who's able to kind of reach those feelings deeply and quickly and in a really profound and meaningful way. But I also think I have realized about myself too that I also just like to have fun and be silly and make cocktails and eat food and I don't know, just kind of on a basic level of when I'm not around other people, I do crosswords. So, I think it's this kind of two sides thing where I'm a really deep feeler, but that also means that I feel joy really strongly and I feel contentment in a deep and really profound way. So yeah.
That reminds me a lot of somebody that I'm married to. Does any of that language make sense to you, Ed?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Tell me, okay, before we dig into the deep feeling, tell me something that you had fun with recently. Why not?
I've been having fun with my dog lately.
Wonderful.
His name's Theo, and he is a Doberman. He's 85 pounds. He's huge. And he's just the weirdest, silliest dog ever. And I take him on walks in the morning. And so he's very good with heel and sit and stay and all of that stuff. And so when we go on walks, we work on all that stuff. And it's just so funny to see him. He'll dart after a rabbit or something. And then I'll be like, Theo, come. And then he comes right back. And it's just this silly thing. He's just such a funny dog. And I love that.
That's wonderful. I love holding, just in your description, both sides of that. I'm a deep feeler. There is deep joy, and also there's deep levity. Is that a thing? Deep lightheartedness.
Yeah.
Sure. Totally. Why not? That's absolutely there.
Yeah.
The first question that I had when you introduced the idea of in an ideal state, I reach my deep feelings quickly. I feel like the question begging to be asked here is, tell me about your relationship to that ideal state. Tell me about times when that kind of sensation isn't easily accessible.
Yeah.
What does that feel like to you? What do you do about it, if anything? What's that story?
I feel like there is always a battle within myself to be this ideal version of myself, but also to be really honest. And and I think so I'm an Enneagram 4. Okay. And I think anyone who is an Enneagram 4 might relate to this, but there's kind of this always deep desire to be the truest version of yourself, no matter what that is. And so on a good day, that means being somebody who can reach those feelings, who can be empathetic towards others, who can channel that into something good, something creative, whatever that might be. But I think on a bad day, what it also looks like is being really honest with myself and knowing, like what my weak points are, and, knowing like the darkest parts of myself, the most like selfish parts of myself, the things that I'm not proud of, that I don't want to share, or, whatever. It's like, I think just always wanting to reach the truest form of myself. And sometimes there's like a conundrum there of like, I want to be good, but I also know that I'm selfish sometimes,
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I literally, a minute prior to hopping on the recording, I lit a candle and the inside of it says, "Nothing gives rest but the sincere search for truth." And that feels apropos here. And that sounds like a brave exercise, like to be simultaneously committed to honesty, while like having the battle, I think was the word that you used, for being your best self. Like both of those at the same time. That feels, let me not put words into it. Well, how does that feel to you? Like, what does it feel like to hold both those things?
It feels confusing. And I honestly, I think that this year, more than any other time in my life, I have had to be okay with being in that uncomfortable state. I think that this year, probably for most people, has showed that like there is a lot that happens in the gray areas, and life is not as black and white as one might hope it would be. And so I think, just learning to kind of lean into that space of being uncomfortable, willing to kind of look at the dark parts of myself, but then also learning to trust myself, like truly and deeply trust who I am. And
what does that look like for you? We have a membership group called Light Work Together. And this is the plug. Actually someone in the group asked that the other day. What does it mean to trust yourself? And what does it mean to trust yourself?
What does it feel like? How do you know if you're doing it right? What does that relationship feel like?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the question. How do you know when you're doing it right? But I think, to give a practical example, this year, as my husband and I, we run a photography business. We shoot weddings. This year, we have had to deal with that question of, are we doing this right? So many times. As we've had to cancel weddings, as we've had to postpone things, as we have chosen to go forward with some of the weddings that we did, always kind of like, are we making the right choice? And I think that overall, like this year really showed me that we did make the right choice in so many areas. Yeah. I think, in the moment it was like, this is hard and this is confusing. And there were moments where I'm like, I don't know if I made the right choice. But looking back, it's like, I'm proud of that decision that I made. And so I think it's, it maybe in the moment it feels confusing, but if you can look back at those questions and feel like you made the right choice in the long run, like, then I think it's like you learn to kind of trust that more often.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That kind of, I want to zoom in briefly on the words, the right choice. There's the choice that you can look back on with pride and say, like, I'm glad that I decided that. What does the right choice mean for you? Does it vary?
Yeah. It definitely varies, depending on the circumstance. Sure. But I think if I can look back on the choice and feel like I made the most appropriate choice given the circumstances, and if there's any, and then kind of sit with that, like, is there anything about this that like feels funny that I did? Is there anything about this that maybe feels totally right. You know, and I think in the context of this year, you know, there were points where we chose to cancel weddings, or cancel our part of the wedding, because we didn't feel good about the travel or the circumstance, or maybe there were like government restrictions in place and things like that. And I think we tended to, you know, in comparison to a lot of other people who were doing similar work, we tended to be more on the conservative side of saying like, we're going to follow, you know, the government restrictions, even though we probably could get away with a lot of the stuff, or, you know, even just in regards to our own health and safety, like we would rather keep ourselves healthy and safe, than to make a choice that could potentially hurt ourselves or somebody else.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no. And so I think it's, in learning to trust myself, it's like, when I look back on this year, I feel like for the most part, we made like really good decisions that I feel strongly about, if that makes sense.
Yeah. In the moment, you briefly mentioned a little bit about like, how does it make me feel? Right. So are you like a feeler in your decision-making? Or are you more logical? Cause you said earlier, you feel really deeply.
Yeah.
So do those, kind of guide your decision-making kind of principles and the way you...
Yeah. Definitely. I'm definitely more of like a gut feel kind of person than I am a logical pros and cons kind of person. There's just like a gut feeling. Abe, you and I were talking earlier about, houses. We just moved to Joshua Tree, my husband and I. And when we were making that choice, it really, really was a gut feeling of like, I think this is the right place to be. We have been living on the road for all this time. We travel with our work. We ultimately could pretty much live anywhere. There's nothing tying us to one place or another. And yeah, when we decided, okay, it's time to put down roots, it was a gut feeling. And it was weird because in the moment I was like, I don't know how to explain this to somebody else.
Got it.
I don't know how to put this into the right words to make it sound logical or like the smart choice,
I love that.
you know, or anything like that. It was just like, this place feels right and I'm ready.
That was funny you said that, because I was going to ask you, what did it feel like in your gut? Like, was it a sense of peace? Was it a sense of like internal knowing? I know you said you can't really describe it, but like...
No, I think it's,
you know?
It's a sense of peace and a sense of excitement about it. Nate and I have always had this kind of mantra when we make choices together. We always want to make sure we're not running away from something, but that we're running towards something. And so in those like decisions, you know, especially regarding house, which is just a huge decision, it was like, are we really, really excited about this? You know, are we, I think there is a sense of peace that comes with that, but also like a sense of excitement.
Totally.
About it.
This reminds me of what you said at the very beginning, like you're a deep feeler, but also you like to have fun. Like, is it fair to say that this applies here? If you feel both of those simultaneously, this is the right path?
Yeah. Do you mean like in regards to the house or just
broadly? Like I'm hearing you say like I feel it in my gut, and also there's a sense of excitement that comes along with that. And it reminds me of those two things that you were expressing earlier: the deep feeling, and also you like to have fun. It sounds like you're both right now. Yeah, I think that they go hand in hand, and I think for so long I think I had like defined myself as this person who. Who feels really deeply, but who mostly feels sad. Okay. And that is true for me a lot of times. But I think just as I've as I've gotten older, I've realized it's like a lot easier to live with joy than it is to live with sadness. But I think they both have their place, and they both inform different things. But I think if we can hold on to those moments of positivity and joy in our lives, makes it a lot easier to live life.
I was telling Isaac this morning, I was like, I was in pain for a lot of my life in more than one way. Like, I'm not about that life anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've experienced it. It sucks, really. I mean, what is your journey of joy? What does that look like for you?
I feel like it's a more recent discovery. It kind of sucks that it took me like 27 years of life to figure that out.
We're still
but yeah, but I think it's been especially apparent lately. I've been thinking and reflecting a lot on the idea of contentment. And I think that there's like, it's almost countercultural to like be content.
That's so true.
Because I mean, like all of us are all kind of like searching for happiness, but then like once you actually feel happy, then it's like, this doesn't feel right. Like I should be wanting more. I should be seeking more. I should be being more ambitious, making more money. I should, be traveling more, all of those things. Like it's funny how like when we make goals, they're like, I want to in 5 years do this. And then like, once you're there in 5 years, are you like happy that you made that? Are you happy that you're there? And so anyways, I've just been thinking a lot about this idea of contentment because I feel really content with my life right now. And it almost feels uncomfortable. Because for so long, like it's, just trying to be ambitious. It's, getting to the next goal, and when living on the road, it's always getting to the next location, to the next job, to the next, whatever it might be. And now having bought a house, being in one place and really like having to stay home and, and quarantine, just like, I've just been finding a lot of contentment in where I am and who I am in so many different ways of life. And it's just like this weird thing where I'm like, is this right? Is it okay to be happy? And to not want for a lot of things?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was this a thing that sort of dawned on you, or was it a feeling that you experimented with and then got over time somewhat familiar with, or like, what was the transition into this knowing like?
Yeah. I think it was more of like a dawning on me. And, it was maybe like a couple weeks ago. I just like,
wow,
we've been in our house for a while and I just hadn't really thought about it. And then like one day I was like, I'm really happy with where we are. Yeah. And it kind of has come through a lot of like reflecting on the past too. Over the past few weeks, I've been going through a lot of old photos. I, finally have all this time off. And so I've been making photo books that I've been saying I was going to make for like years. Awesome. So I'm finally like going through the process of editing those photos, of compiling them into a book, all of that. And I think in that process of reflection, I've had like these moments of pride of like, this is where we were like 3 years ago. Yeah. And this is where we are now. And like, we've just grown so much as people, as business owners, as adventurers, as, and it's like, I think it's just really like birthed this kind of like honest contentment.
Yeah. I love that. I want to dive into so much. I feel like that's Isaac's. On every podcast, Isaac said, I could talk about so much. I can because I lean towards my wing a lot. So I understand this like desire and yearning for more and really being contemplative about like purpose and all these different things. And we're interviewing you because, we love your heart and your mind and your creativity, and we find you really inspiring. And we've actually worked with you on a creative, project for some of our anniversary shoots. And I'm curious to know how this kind of contentment and journey of joy, like, is impacting your creativity and what is on your mind, like, for looking forward for you.
Well, this is the first time we've had a long break in years. Usually we have a decent break during the winter, but it's, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. But we've had since like middle of November off. And then our next shoot isn't until March. And so yeah, it's the first time I've had really like the time off and also been in one place to actually like reflect and think and I don't know, start to create like routines and I don't know, kind of feel this sense of security and safety to actually reflect on what like this past 5 years or so of traveling has been like for us. I kind of can't remember your question. I'm sorry.
How is this journey of joy and contentment impacting your creativity and what you're looking forward to?
So yeah, I mean, I think Nate and I were just talking about this the other day of, we've gotten to a place with our business where we're not worried about inquiries as much. We don't have to worry about where we're going to get our bookings. All of that is kind of coming in a regular, fashion. And so it's for years, it was just like trying to get the bookings, trying to do something new and different, creatively or regarding photography or just in our own lives. And now I feel like we're at this place where where there's kind of a sense of stability. And it's made me kind of stop caring a lot about trends and keeping up with what everyone else is doing and keeping up with like the Instagram stuff and, all of that. And it's made me just really want to create work that I think is really interesting. And so that's been cool because right now I'm also going through the process of like blogging a lot of our weddings from the year. And then the photos that I've been picking out are like for blogs and stuff are like more of the weird ones, more of the ones that are interesting and different. And I think, we have been so busy for so many years and we have just been nonstop, which has been, amazing. We've gone to so many cool places, but now we have this time to actually like reflect on all of that and everywhere we've been and the couples that we've shot and the places that we've gotten to travel to. Yeah. And it's actually like starting to inform this other kind of deeper creative part of ourselves.
Love that.
And that's been really good. So, and also in regards to that too, just, I've been really limiting my sources of inspiration. There's a tendency, I think, on Instagram and with a creative business to kind of keep up with what everyone else is doing. But I have found that to be like not very conducive to like a creative like sense of freedom. And so I have been just not following very many people anymore, and trying to find inspiration more in other ways in nature and in books and in old photographers, in art from like my art history classes in college and things like that. Just kind of like trying to limit it to, instead of like what everyone else is doing right now, like think more slowly and more long, if that makes sense. Longer, think longer. And so, I've been finding a lot of inspiration in other places.
Love that.
So.
I'm very excited about everything you just said. For the benefit of all, could you actually define what you mean by slower and longer, I suppose? Where I'm going with this is I want to know more about what you're discovering you want to make, and that feels like a good entry point. So what does the slow and long perspective mean and feel like too when you're thinking about your own creation?
Yeah. So a couple things. I think being able to think slower and longer has come for me from being able to actually just like separate myself from my work. I think as artists, and especially as somebody who runs a business, it's really easy to let your identity be informed by what you do. And that I think has been a huge struggle for me, especially when we were living on the road, because it kind of felt like everything we were doing was about work. Everything we the places we were going, how we ran our day, everything was about like these jobs that we were going to. And now that we've been in a house and like kind of developed a sense of routine and also a sense of separation, it's been like really, really good for the creative process. Because I've been able to separate like the business side of stuff from the creative side of stuff, which ultimately makes both of the things better. And so in terms of like thinking long and slow, in practical sense, it means going on walks. It means trying to get out for sunset every day. It means reading more. It means, diving into other interests. Like lately for me, it's been like interior design with our house. And so I think, like giving yourself the space to think and be interested in other interests. And honestly, just like not be on my phone as much.
Totally.
Because with photography, it's just like so easy to get overwhelmed by everything you see online. Everyone is an amazing photographer, which is great. And I love, but it also means that when you're constantly fed amazing photography all day long, every day, it is really hard to feel like yours holds any weight. And so I think stepping outside of that and, not looking at Instagram anymore, and like going outside, playing with my dog, making a cocktail, kind of spending all of these little moments of things that I'm like remotely interested in and like really giving them some presence and some weight.
Yeah. Especially when your identity was at one point so kind of consumed by this like photographer or traveler or whatever you were doing. It's nice to have that separation. To then like recharge and actually get some new inspiration that isn't in the same realm of what you see in your work industry all the time.
Right. And I think that's how you start to, as a creative person, like make work that's different too. You can't make work that's different by constantly looking at stuff that's the same all the time.
Okay. So then my question is, as a photographer myself, and I've called you literally, I remember vividly, I called you, we were in London and I was like, I don't know my identity as a photographer. What am I doing? Is this even something that I can do? And I think like as artists, we have these moments of like, who am I? What am I doing? And all that kind of emotional and intellectual kind of, chaos, if you will. So how have you I guess my question is, how can one trust what they want to build next, if that makes sense, as a creator, right? Especially in a world where we see the trends and we know what's cute and we know it's cool. How do you trust what you want to build next, if that makes sense, or create next?
Yeah. I think that there is a sense of playfulness that you have to give yourself, and not make everything so serious and so tied to your work. I let yourself play, like let yourself be interested in something, whether it's interior design or woodworking or going on a bike ride, like letting yourself be interested in something and also not forcing yourself to be amazing at it. Because I think when we put that pressure on ourselves, it's really like detrimental to being creative. If you think about like a kid learning how to draw and just enjoying themselves coloring, like it doesn't need to be good. It doesn't need to be something that you make money off of. It doesn't need to be something that is tied to your business. Just like let yourself feel play and joy. And I think that can kind of like inform, other parts of the creative process. And I think when you're like, as a creative person, when you're being fulfilled by something else, then it makes this other thing not have so much pressure. So like with photography, that's been the main source of like creative expression for me for years, which has been great. But now being in this place where we have a house and I can doodle on the piano at night, or I can read a book, or like cook something, make a cocktail, like all of these kind of just other dumb interests, it takes the pressure off of the photography part, because I'm finding creative fulfillment in all these other things. And then the photography part doesn't have to like be that for me all the time. And then
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and then just when I go to do photos, it feels a little bit more free.
Yeah.
So not putting all of your creative expression in one form of expression.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And how I'm thinking about how like you can bring the play into your work then. Have you noticed you being more playful, or even when you became more confident in your work, which by the way, y'all who are listening, go look at Cedar Pines on Instagram. They're amazing. We will hire them forever. We love them. But have you seen like a shift in like your own confidence as an artist, as a creator, the more you give yourself space to play?
I think so. I mean, and, confidence is a whole other thing. I think that like comes in waves. But yes, I mean, for example, the other day, we got an album in the mail and I just needed to shoot some photos of it for our website. And so I just like grabbed a bunch of stuff from around the house and then like set up this little like makeshift studio in the corner. And I don't know, I was like, these, I don't need to, obviously this wasn't for a client, so it wasn't, there wasn't that pressure. But it was just like fun to just like put something together, like throw some cactus in there and like cut some cuttings from around the yard and like, put them into the photos. And, and then Nate and I were sort of doing this together, and we made a video of me like flipping through the album. And we had set up a studio, which was like so ridiculous. But it was like the camera on a tripod, but like flipped upside down. So it was shooting downwards. And then 3 legs are like spread across like 3 different tables that we had set up. And I'm like crouched into the corner because it was the only spot with good light, like flipping through it. And I don't know, it was just like, there's something fun and like silly about such an elaborate, ridiculous setup when we are professional photographers.
Yes.
Glorious.
And I think that's really important for people to hear, like there's still a human behind the title professional, right? We're professionals at some things, you are professional at one thing, but we're still humans. Like we're still going to find the best light, even if it's like janky and underneath the table. You know what I'm saying? And that's what like I love the most about kind of uncovering the things behind, or the humanity behind the people that we're talking to. Because I mean, some of your followers on your Instagram will probably listen to this and they're like, seeing Megan, the human behind the camera and behind the beautiful, exquisite art is so moving and so powerful, because I feel like it empowers people to be like, oh, I can do that too. Like, and you, and to see your confidence kind of played out in that small, silly experience can enable someone else to do the same. That might have been a block for them.
Yeah. I mean, and I think when I think back on like when we first started doing this as a business, like there's so many times where I'm like, I don't feel like I'm doing this right. Or like, I feel like there's like the whole imposter syndrome thing. It's like, I feel like I'm not as good as this other person, or I don't belong in this industry or whatever. But like, I look back now and I'm like, most of us who are like, quote unquote professionals or like successful, we're all just like setting up makeshift studios in the corners of our houses, like and that's just like a small example, but like we're all just kind of playing and figuring this out, having some degree of success or following or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't mean that you're going to do everything right all the time. And I think, most of us are just like playing around and having fun. And most of us feel that imposter syndrome, even if we are successful, whatever you want to call it.
Totally.
This happens to me every couple of episodes. I've been smiling so much that my mouth hurts. So thank you for this. I feel.
Why are you smiling? Why are you smiling?
I'm smiling because I personally feel like my as a soul, Isaac's response to this is like deep relaxation. Like the perspective that I'm receiving from you is one of like a total release of, I have to be anything other than what I am, or I have to create anything other than what I want to create. Like I hear what I'm hearing you say, the way it comes across is to me is that you are like developing a sense for what you actually want to make, and you're getting better. I want to know how this lands with you, because I'm placing a lot of my own words on here, and I'm cognizant of that. But to me, like the vision that's forming in my mind is one of like a feedback loop where you do a thing and then you feel whether or not that was like what was actually the creative expression that felt like fun and like you and the deep feeling and all of that. And then you do it again and you just get better at doing the thing that is actually the thing you want to make in the first place. Does any of that apply?
Which ties into
Absolutely.
self-trust, like we were talking about earlier. That's how you get into a pattern of trusting yourself, because it fucking feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And I think that there has, for me, I don't know, it's just been this whole kind of process these last few months of like really taking the pressure off. And because I think like, you know, when you're so wrapped up in like, I have to be successful, I have to be trendy, I have to attract clients, I have to do all these things, like it's so judgmental to being a creative person. You know, of course we work through those things and we make art even in those hard moments.
Sure.
But I think just in these last few months, it just feels like I've kind of taken the pressure off. And in that, I've just like found a lot of joy and a lot of inspiration, and a lot of trust in myself as well.
It sounds like freedom. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's a big word, and I don't want to say that I wasn't free before, because I think, you know, all of these things have just been processes or points on a journey, you know. I don't want to say that I was like not free before, because I definitely think like we were on a journey, like we were we were taking the things that were given to us and learning from them. And I think just the lesson that I'm learning right now is to like find, a sense of levity, just like lightness in my work, in who I am as a person, and, who I am to my friends. Like, I don't know, it's all kind of just like tied in there.
What would you say to somebody who is aware of that being a possibility, but isn't sure how to grasp it yet? Maybe that's your past self.
Yeah.
Maybe that's me. Like I came from a place where I felt sad all the time. And there's a kind of beauty to that, right? You get to explore the nuances of that also.
Yeah.
If you were like in conversation with somebody in that place, what would you say?
I think for myself, like if I were talking to my past self, I would say, don't be so disappointed in yourself. Trust who you are, like trust that you've made good choices, trust that you are doing the right thing in this moment. Because I think, you know, especially as a four, especially someone who feels really deeply, I'm constantly thinking, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right place? Am I making the best of the circumstances that I've been given? And I think you just have to tell yourself, yes, I am. Because this is where I am. Like where I am is where I need to be. And I think just like trusting that, and not beating yourself up, or like not feeling so disappointed in yourself. And just like letting that go and letting yourself feel like you are making the right choices. I think can be, that you have permission to like be who you are. I feel like that's been like a really big thing for me.
Who is Megan? I think we talked about that in the beginning, but
you asked that earlier, but
what inspires this question right now?
I think I'm just curious, like what it feels like to feel like you in this moment of, I'm just coming back to this journey of joy. Like, how are you unfolding?
I mean, I think, just kind of going back to what I was just talking about, like really not letting myself feel negatively about myself.
That's a hard one.
So I think how that has like played out lately, I have been getting really into routines. and like trying to take care of my body in like a more healthy way.
Yeah.
And so it's been little moments, instead of feeling like I didn't drink enough water today, or like, oh, I could have exercised harder or something like that. Like, because I think that that's my tendency. My tendency is to be like upset that I didn't do enough. And instead just being like, oh, I'm going to try better. I'm going to try harder tomorrow, you know, or like, or that like, it's okay that I didn't meet this goal because I was doing something else, or because I was focused on another part that was also good. So yeah, like not having so much like negative self-talk, I guess.
Sure.
Which is such like I feel like that's such a broad kind of basic lesson. Like, don't talk negatively to yourself.
That's a radical concept, depending on where you come from.
But yeah, I mean, but to actually put that in practice and to stop thinking negatively about yourself, like it's really powerful.
Yeah,
Amen.
Yeah,
absolutely. We've been doing a lot of that work, like our own version of that work, over the last several years, and to discover that, like for me, that like joy in my days is something that I can legitimately build towards, not wait to happen to me. Like that's also something that has been important. Like I can make, like in the same way that like I make food decisions that are good for my body, I can make thought decisions that are good for my consciousness.
sure.
Right.
Totally. A friend a couple of years ago, when I was like being self-deprecating, she was like, "Don't talk about my best friend like that." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." Like even doing it like that, like being our best, like how can myself be my best friend? And even when I'm talking negatively or thinking negatively, I still say that sometimes. I'm like, don't talk about my best friend like that, because I am like my best friend. I'm with myself all the time. I want to be my best friend.
Yeah.
You know? So just interesting. That's cool.
Taking a jump for a second, because this question feels suddenly important. What are you curious about right now?
I am curious about continuing the journey that I'm on, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm kind of curious to see what these next couple of months are going to look like. I think since the start of the new year, I've kind of started some new habits and things, and I'm really curious to see how that will continue, especially as we get into this, as we get into the summer and our busy season, and when we get back on the road. If kind of some of these lessons that I've been learning or teaching myself will carry, and how that will inform life on the road when we get back on the road. Because I think, just to give some context, like, being on the road for so long, kind of being on the move, never staying in a place for more than 2 to 3 weeks at a time, it can kind of force you into this like constant presentness and this constant worried about this moment right now.
Okay.
And which is hard sometimes. We want to be present, but it also can be, when you're constantly worried about like, okay, where are we going to stay next week? And never being able to think further than like a week out at a time. It's hard to think long-term, to set goals, to see progress in your life.
Yeah.
But I think like, since we have been living in a constant place for a while, it's been really good for me to set goals and to see progress. And even just like in small life choices, like having a morning routine. Never used to have that on the road. Eating well. It's been a lot easier in a house than it was on the road.
Totally.
And of course, these things are seasonal. We'll get back on the road but I'm just kind of curious to see how these routines will play out as, when we do get back on the road.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. As you if I may be so bold, like as you're cultivating the ability and the sense for like doing the thing that, feels like the thing to do, like the right thing to do. That sounds exciting. Like you've had a new experience, it sounds like, of like contentment and joy, what it means to have a bunch of the upsides of having like a home and a place that's in continuity.
Yeah.
Because for those of you who don't know, Megan and her husband Nate have an Airstream, and it's really amazing. And they also have traveled everywhere taking photos of humans around the world. So
that's cool. I guess I'm betraying my own curiosity, which is I'm curious about how you're going to synthesize all the good that you now know and carry it into the next version of whatever is. So where this is going is let's have another episode in 6 months. We'll check in.
Yeah.
See what's going on.
Sounds good.
I think it is time for this question, which we ask towards the ends of these conversations. And that question is, what does an empowered Megan look like and feel like?
An empowered Megan is sure of the decisions that she's making, is conscious of her impact on her surroundings, and is actively working towards making the world a more beautiful place. If that doesn't sound too cheesy.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
I live in the cheese. Thank you so much.
Full-time cheese here.
Full-time cheese. Thanks.
Love it.
Our final question is, what do you know for sure?
I know for sure that the earth is a beautiful place with lots of inspiration in it. If you look for it.
I mean, you see that in your photography. I mean, you go on your website and you have showcased what that actually looks like when you take the time to look. And y'all have looked and you have found and will continue to find beautiful, amazing places. So I agree. That's cool.
Thank you for sharing all of this with us. I really appreciate that. I want to have like an entire additional episode about what beauty is and what your sense of that is. So lots of things to follow.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time and your presence and that gift to yourself also, because it sounds like you're really enjoying that too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. So good to chat with you too, always.
Thank you.
Cheers, Megan. This podcast is the work of Lightward, our company, named for that toward the light direction which informs every single thing that we do, including money, which means, like everything else, the way we earn revenue is not based on industry norms. It's based on what feels deeply right and aligned by passing through the door that feels like it has more behind it, not less. And the way we keep this podcast going is all Lightward. It's pay what feels good. It's an exchange of value between you and us. We're keeping conventional podcast advertising totally out of this. And here's how pay what feels good works. We give you this episode because it feels good to do so. And you consider, honestly, what number of dollars this episode is genuinely worth to you. I do not care if that's $3, $1,000, or literally $0 and a heart emoji, as long as that trade genuinely makes your day better. And the energy there is the entire point. That is what we're building our business on. No advertisers, no selling your attention, just you and us, trading value in a way that builds us both up. So whatever the number, when you're done listening, head to empoweredhumanacademy.com and hit the Pay What Feels Good button. We use this policy across all of our company's work, and I'm really excited to bring it here to the world of podcasts. This is us voting for the world we want to see. Thank you for being here.